Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
I think I've catfished some Star Wars fans into thinking that I just talk about Star Wars, trying to reconfigure my mind and tell myself that everything I know about the world is probably wrong. And that's not a bad thing that I'm coming to that realization, but it's a shock to the system, right? It's like a bucket of cold water on your head in the morning. It's a lived-in universe. What I mean by that is if you compare that against other sci-fi movies like Star Trek or 2001: A Space Odyssey, everything is so pristine and clean and stuff. And Star Wars is saying, okay, it's a sci-fi universe, but it's been through hell. And it looks like it's been through hell, but it also makes it relatable to Earth, because you look at Mos Eisley Cantina stuff, it's a seedy bar and stuff. It just happens to be in space. Yep. Everything is upside down pretty much. What we're taught was good is probably bad. What we're taught is bad is probably good. It's kind of like the cheese sticks of conspiracy. It just gets you a little bit of a taste, right? And then hopefully it'll lead you to somebody like Charlie, right? He's like the Yoda of all this stuff. This is Konspiracy Kyle, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
What's up, y'all? This is Airey Bros Radio, and this is episode 120 with Konspiracy Kyle. You ready, Prince?
You kidding me, Richie Rich? We have an epic podcast this week. We're going to nerd out on Star Wars. You all know, if you listen to Jules 2.0, the Airey Bros get down with Star Wars. So we're going to throw it into something else we like, conspiracies, and we're going to get down on it. So stay tuned for that. But first, let's check in with the Airey Bros. How have we been? How have you been this week, Richie Rich? You ready for this podcast with Konspiracy Kyle? Have you had a good week? You've been up in your nutrition? What's going on, dog?
Well, I'm ready for Kyle. This is a great episode. We got into Star Wars and his podcast and how he connects what's going on in this crazy world we're living in and how that ties into some of the different series episodes of Star Wars. This was a great conversation, but we also touch on, being the change and upping your health and optimization. And while it's fun sometimes to talk about the problems, if we're not talking about solutions to the problems, I feel like I'm losing my goddamn mind. So one of the things I want to do more and more is talk about solutions, talk about things that we can do to make this place better, how we could fix things. Last week's episode with Jim Gale was amazing, talking about all the benefits that we could get from growing our own food, cutting off ties with the big industries, and they don't want us to be able to do things on our own. So I think, since we are athletes and have grown up as athletes, I think we are going to be better served if we start talking about solutions as opposed to just living in that echo chamber of talking about the problem.
Yeah, and I think one of the first solutions, probably around June, we decided to start going to the farmer's market, and I've been getting way more greens in my life, way more vegetables in my life, and I notice it, right? And then that kind of chained itself onto getting out the door earlier to move first thing in the morning, getting those feet wet in the ground. So I think those are some of the solutions. We talk about it on Jules 2.0, and I know with the nutrition, it's been key this summer. I know there's been some supplements we've been taking. First one I kind of want to shout out that I like, and I've really noticed a difference within 2 days, is Black Oxygen. You guys are going to hear Pat Miletich talk about that next week, but we want to talk about it right now. Black Oxygen increases your, and correct me if I'm going to botch this, Richie Rich, but it increases your cellular oxygen rate. It gives more oxygen to your cells in the best bro science types of terms. I'm going to put it to you in Prince James terms. this stuff works, you're going to feel it right away. For me, if something works or doesn't work, you're going to be able to feel it right away. And I think with the nutrition, with the movement lifestyle, putting that black oxygen on top of it, I'm really feeling a difference. How about yourself, Richie Rich?
100%. I think, we often talk with our guests about their daily rituals or morning rituals. And one of our daily rituals starting off the day is getting that healthy dose of clean water, not tap water, 32 ounces to start off the morning before you put your coffee in. And one of the new things that we've been adding to that is the black oxygen. Other thing that we add in there, similar effects. One of the things I learned from an old yogi hippie was cell food. So put the cell food, which again is going to increase your oxygen uptake at the cellular level. The black oxygen also has electrolytes in it. On top of that, we're putting in the Ultima every morning. I like the orange flavor. I know you got a little bit different palate, so you go with some other flavors, but I tend to stick with either the lemon lime and the orange. But man, I'll tell you what, whether it's the black oxygen, the cell food, the combination, also kicking that beetroot with the proprietary blend that we've been making up here with the beetroot, the cordyceps, and the Irish moss or the sea moss. Like Pat's going to talk about it next week and you're going to hear about it. But man, I'll tell you what, I just love breathing and have gratitude for breathing with these substances flowing through my veins. It just feels like literally like I've got an oxygen tank and I'm just breathing through an oxygen tank. That's how much better I'm breathing. We can get into the differences of what each one is doing. But again, the cell food, the black oxygen is going to increase that uptake at the cellular level. I don't know what the percentage is on the cell food. I know the black oxygen is 45%, I believe. So, I mean, we're like probably close to 60% increased oxygen at the cellular level. And, unfortunately, my back has given me a little bit of problems. So I haven't really been able to push it on the training to see where it's at and how it does on that side of things. But I just know day to day, walking around late at night when I'm reading my books, I'm in love with breathing.
Yeah, and I even noticed it after Jules 2.0 on Sunday, took a black oxygen, and within a couple minutes, headache went away, was breathing deep and kind of able to focus a little more. And same goes for the beetroot, man. Noticing the beetroots, and we've been talking about it on Jules 2.0. And I think all this kind of summed up, we're looking at what's going wrong in the world, right? What you said at the beginning of the podcast. But at the end of the day, because of what's going on in the world, it's kind of got us to step back, question what we're doing, change things up, and start optimizing ourselves for the better. So yes, there's some craziness going on in the world and might not know what was going on at times, but I think the good thing and the thing I'm grateful for the past year is where we're at right now with our health and our wellness and getting the proper nutrients. I think nutrition density is everything, right? What can you absorb on the food you're eating? You're just going to be firing better, right? If you're taking in the right nutrients, if you're taking in the right foods, you got a daily practice going, you're just going to fire better. You're going to be a little bit more productive and things aren't going to shake you as much. For me, at the end of the day, it's all about well-being and having inner peace. And the more I give back to my body, the more inner peace I get.
Yeah, everything is connected. And, whether it's your gut health, they say your gut is your second brain, trust your gut. If you're abusing your gut, you're not going to be picking up on some of those vibes, some of those energies, some of the things that the universe is throwing at you. Going back real quick to the black oxygen, I found that fact sheet that I was looking for. Like I mentioned, it's an electrolyte, one of the most powerful electrolytes in existence. Couple that with the Ultima, you're leveling up. Again, the oxygen delivery, 45% at the cellular level. It's got 70 trace minerals. You can look into the reasons why you want trace minerals. You can look into why you want to be using beetroot. It's going to reduce oxidative stress, improves your immune function. How much have we heard about your immune function this past 18, 19 months? Circulation, it's going to boost your metabolism. Couple that with the fasting that we've been talking about ad nauseum for the last 18, 19 months. Improves your brain function and memory. Who doesn't want that? better brain function, better memory equals better mood, heart health, nutrient absorption. Again, that goes back to your gut health. Throw in some probiotics there. It's just going to level up your absorption. We didn't even get into talking about reducing and removing toxins from heavy metals. Don't even get me started on aluminum and fluoride. We've been talking about that for a bit, and we've probably got some intros and episodes coming along that. Cellular regeneration, repopulate your gut flora, and it balances your hormones. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop. I'm not even going to get into the whole, this does not prevent, cure, or I don't know. Anyway, I'm not even talking about that stuff from that kind of perspective. I'm just talking about from an athletic performance benefit, because that's where we can speak most authentically about a product or any of the products that we have in the cabinets here. And this new one, I've been on it for this is my 5th week. And like I said, I really have gratitude for deep breaths. And it's amazing, that Irish moss, the sea moss, is going to reduce the mucus, take away the mucus. So coupling all these things together, there's a lot of things that you can be doing out there to level up. And we're just going to be bringing you all that kind of information moving forward, focusing on solutions and not the problem.
Absolutely, Richie Rich, double stamp everything you just said. So if you like what the Airey Bros are spitting, if you're scratching your head, you want to know what is this black oxygen that they're talking about, you already know. Go to those show notes, click on the link, check it out. If you have any questions, hit Richie Rich or myself up. We are more than welcomed to answer any of your questions and help you with anything supplement wise, nutrition wise, accountability wise. You already know the Airey Bros are about that life. If you like this podcast, if you like what Kyle is spitting with the conspiracy in the force, check out the links. Tell them the Airey Bros sent you. As always, have an epic week. Sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of Airey Bros Radio.
Yo, like my man said, when you're done listening to this episode, go check out Kyle. Check out the links in the show notes. Follow him on Instagram. Follow him on Twitter. He puts some really good memes out there. Conspiracy in the Force is a really entertaining podcast. Like I said, if you're into Star Wars, if you've gotten down at any time in your life with Star Wars, he does a really good job of connecting what's going on with that in the Force, in Star Wars. So give him a little bit of love. And like my man said, if you have any questions about any of this stuff that we just talked about, anything about leveling up, don't forget on Patreon, we do have that accountability level 3, tier 3 accountability coaching available for you. Jimmy and I will be up in your ass every morning and every night before you go to bed, making sure you're checking off your goals, you're drinking your water, you're taking your supplements, you're getting your walks, doing your weightlifting, whatever it is. If you need accountability, we got you. So check that out. Go check us out on Patreon. Get on that accountability coaching, worth the price of a couple cups of coffee each month. And if you're having trouble staying on track, we are there to help you be accountable. And as always, we're on that value for value system over here. So if you're getting any value out of anything we're doing over here, you're finding out about new podcasts, you're reading new books. If you added a new practice to your daily ritual, maybe you're drinking Ultima, maybe you're fasting now, maybe you got your feet in the sand, maybe you're sunning your butthole, whatever it is. If you're getting any value out of anything we're doing over here, you got rock hard beetroot boners, we want to hear about them. Tell us who you're stabbing. Whatever it is, whatever it may be, whatever value you're getting out of this, show us a little love, give us a little value back, however that looks to you. Maybe it's a review. We would love them. 5-star, 1-star, whatever it is. You think we suck? We want to hear about it. Give us your feedback. How can we make this show better? That's a value. We already know your mom's a fan. You got mushroom stocks? We'll take those too. We're set up for crypto now. You got anything? You're getting a value. Give us a little love back. Share the love. Show us what kind of value you're getting back. Until next time, this is Airey Bros Radio. This is episode 120 with Konspiracy Kyle. Much love. Namaste from the boys of 1512.
The idea kind of it kind of came naturally, like if there's something you're really passionate about, you like to take it as far as, Charlie, Sam, a lot of those guys. So I started kind of getting my mind in a place that it had never been before, trying to reconfigure my mind and tell myself that everything I know about the world is probably wrong. And that's not a bad thing that I'm coming to that realization, but it's a shock to the system, right? It's like a bucket of cold water on your head in the morning. I grew up in a strong, like conservative, like Christian family. To find out, I'm like, well, shit, the Bush family was involved with Nazi Germany in World War II and all this crazy shit with all the banks and stuff. And like the 9/11, obviously that's a whole other thing too. But it's like you find out that these people who you were told that were heroes were really anything but. And, I just had been believing the stories that the news told me without really, thinking critically about it. So once my mind was kind of in that space, I started looking at Star Wars, specifically really stuff in that prequel trilogy you were talking about. It polarized a lot of people, but now that I've gone back over the past year and started looking at it a little bit more critically, it tells a really great story about how a totalitarian government, gets from, a noble, freedom-loving republic to like your Nazi Germany. Like, I don't know that the story was necessarily told as well as it could have been. I think there was a lot of I'll be honest, the acting was pretty shitty. That left a lot to be determined. So, but then again, I just think looking back at it now in this realm of, especially where we are today with all the things that are being rolled out, you see throughout that prequel trilogy, it's just like things are just stacking on top of each other, just one thing after another. And then after a while, it's already too late. Just think of right now with all the freedoms and things being taken away and people cheering on censorship and people cheering on, I think even just today, the press secretary saying they're going to start cracking down on people's Facebook posts and stuff. Like when people are cheering that stuff on, there's going to get to a point where it's going to come for them and it's going to be too late. And you really see that in very interesting parallels as you get to the end of that prequel trilogy. So back to kind of, how I got into the podcast, I thought, let me kind of take a few of these little parallels and kind of, make it kind of an easily digestible, like, 10, 15 minute format, kind of breaking down some of this stuff. And I kind of joke that a lot of the little solo shows I do that are, 10 to 15, 20 minutes, it's kind of like the cheese sticks of conspiracy. It just gets you a little bit of a taste, right? And then hopefully it'll lead you to somebody like Charlie, right? He's like the Yoda of all this stuff. I've learned so much from, talking with him a few times on his show and on my show, and just all of his content, and he puts it out in a great way for people to digest it. So like, that's kind of where I saw my podcast going, is kind of introduce some of these topics, with the hopes that it would lead people towards, thinking about things in a different way. And plus, I've always thought that giving people like analogies or metaphors for things is kind of a way to easily digest, hard information, I guess, for lack of a better term. No different than like, a preacher talks about things in the Bible and how it affects your everyday life. Like I can say like, well, whenever you tell somebody about what's going on nowadays in our world and you compare it to Nazi Germany, like you instantly kind of see some people switch off, like, okay, you're just a crazy person. But if I say, well, it's like the empire, it's a little bit more palatable of a conversation because there's not as much, it's a fictional universe. There's not as much polarization there. So you can kind of have that kind of conversation. So I've been doing it I just hit 1 year anniversary. So I've been really enjoying doing it and hope to, keep doing it, long into the future.
Yeah. Congratulations on your 1 year anniversary.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's funny. We had Isaac Weishaupt on not too long ago, and I forget who he was quoting, but he said that it's easier to educate people by entertaining them than by trying to teach them.
Right.
So that kind of fits in right with everything you're going. You said right before March of 2020, you started to get into Charlie and Sam. And was there a red pill moment that kind of led you to those podcasts or anything specifically like that? Or how'd you find those guys?
No, not necessarily. I kind of found it was kind of organic, or something I just kind of happened upon. But for several years, I've kind of had this inkling, that something's not right with the world. Me and my wife, I think kind of our first like aha moment was back in I can't remember if it was 2016 or 2017 when that Vegas shooting went down. At that country festival, and like we liked a lot of the country artists and stuff that were there. So we were kind of keying into all the news stories about what was going on with this. And both me and my wife had no idea about any of the conspiracy, any of that kind of stuff. But it was just concerning to us how within a day or two, like it was completely out of the news. Like it was supposedly like the biggest mass shooting in America, but within a handful of days, it was out of the news. We're like, well, what the hell? Like, we just wanted to know more, like what's going on, who did this, what happened here. But so it kind of shows a few things. For one, it shows the power of the media to shift a narrative towards somewhere else when they want to, and also the fact that there was something really effed up going on with that, because they got it out of the news as soon as possible. But it should have been the biggest news story for like a month, 2-3 months. So that was one thing that kind of started down that rabbit hole for me. And then kind of, I think the next one was just kind of thinking more about like the 9/11 stuff and what really went on there. That was something that I never allowed myself to even contemplate before, that there was anything screwed up with that. But once I started digging into that, I'm like, holy crap. So, yeah, it was weird. I just kind of somehow came across some of those podcasts almost on accident, but like, I think it's really changed my life for the better. So it was kind of a interesting coincidence. I wouldn't necessarily call it a coincidence. I think it was probably meant to happen in one way, shape, or form to kind of lead me to where I am today. But it's a really strange kind of path to get there.
Some might say the force led you there.
It might have been the force. It could have been.
You said before that sometimes if you can change things in using Star Wars talk and not call someone a Nazi or whatever, you can kind of get away with things. Do you feel that you can kind of get away with talking some conspiracy things when you disguise it in Star Wars? Because we just got our Charlie Robinson interview we put out this week, got flagged, banned off of YouTube, and it happens a lot anytime we kind of talk about stuff like this. Do you feel you can kind of get away with stuff if you disguise it in Star Wars talk?
Yeah, sometimes. I will say, yeah, YouTube has been a difficult situation because I like to make little videos and stuff that goes along with my content, and Disney flags some of that stuff right away just because it's really funny. I made a video, I'd say probably 3-4 months ago, which was kind of just like a PowerPoint presentation, but then I would go back and forth between that and clips from YouTube where people had Star Wars clips from YouTube. Okay. So I was like just screen recording stuff from YouTube, and Disney flagged it and took it down, said it was copywritten content, although the video I was capturing was from YouTube. So I'm like, how is that not? But it was really weird. Like it was called, I made this presentation called Intergalactic Totalitarianism, and like I changed something about the title to talk about like ethics and diversity or something, and like it got unflagged. Like there's some like weird things in there, but no, to your larger point, yeah, I think that has been helpful when you talk about it in that lens, because especially with sharing memes and stuff like that, if you're using kind of fictional things, maybe it doesn't feed through their algorithm or something. But yeah, I've somehow been able to avoid some of that stuff, but right, still talking about the same kind of content. So it's a little interesting.
And talking about what's going on today and how that compares to Star Wars or any kind of conspiracies that compare to Star Wars, in your opinion, what's kind of the easiest thing to kind of point someone to? Like here's a conspiracy that kind of goes with Star Wars. It can kind of jump right in and understand it right away.
Sure. So one thing that's happening in there's this new animated series that just came out on the Disney platform called The Bad Batch, which is it takes place right after the prequel trilogy ended, and the Empire is starting to kind of grow and become, what you see in the original movies, right? Like this huge totalitarian, communistic type government. One thing they're starting to do is they're starting to enact like a galactic passport, like an imperial, it's called a chain code. Okay. But it's essentially, like your passport, or like this whole COVID passport, vaccine passport thing that's rolling out now, where if you don't have that, you can't travel, buy, sell goods, etc. So when you see something like that, obviously we know the empire is evil. Okay. Like that's like, it's not like there's no nuance there. That's one thing George Lucas did. He said, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. So with that being said, you start to see how they're oppressing this system on the galactic citizens. And it's no different than what's going on right now. The only difference is that we're getting kind of a PR spin in our world. That's one of the biggest ones. And then I would say another one too is just kind of about like war in general, or about like opposing sides. Back in the prequel trilogy, you have the Galactic Republic, who's like the leading government body of the time, facing off against these separatists, and they're engaged in years long battle. But what's really happening is that the same person is kind of controlling both sides of the conflict. So kind of going back to, if you think about all the major banks and things throughout history, they've spent great deals of money financing both sides of war, and basically making sure that they always win. So but the larger point to the war, when they set these opposing sides against each other, it's really, the war itself really doesn't matter. It's there's things going on in the background that the war is really just a distraction. Basically what's happening is there's this war going on, but at the same time, the senator, Palpatine, who becomes the emperor in Star Wars, he's using this war to slowly gain more and more and more power. He says, listen, these people are seceding from our government. We need to create an army. Hey, creating an army is good. We need to fight the bad people. Yeah, that's great. But then that army you create ends up turning on its own citizens. So basically the point that a lot of things happen that we're told are good and for a just purpose that end up being anything but. You can talk about that in comparison with the COVID vaccine, right? Everybody says it's safe and effective. Well, this Army of the Republic was safe and effective and doing what it was supposed to do until they flipped the switch and had these troopers turn on their own citizens. So there's a lot of different rabbit holes there, but I think that's one of the biggest ones, is that you set two sides against each other to fight, just like your Democrats, Republicans. Meanwhile, people are consolidating power in the background. Just look at everything that happened last year. It was one of the big, during 2020, it was one of the biggest like power grabs in history, because we were all locked down. We were fighting about masks, no mask, vaccine, no vaccine. Meanwhile, all these, $1 million, billion dollar companies are now like $1 trillion companies. So there's just anytime so basically, I guess the main point of that is anytime you see a narrative being pushed that's meant to polarize people, just know that there's something larger going on that they're trying to make that a distraction from.
And when you take a deep dive into the world of Star Wars, and as we got into the Mandalorian the past 2 years or what it's been, and you go on Wikipedia and you go down all these rabbit holes, and you're like, oh my God, there's almost like as an extensive history in the Star Wars realm as there is in our realm. And then, lo and behold, you hear about this thing called Tartaria, and you're like, well, maybe maybe our history is completely, everything we've ever been taught is scripted or doctored in some way, shape, or form. And in the beginning, when the starts rolling down, it says a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then you have all people that are crazy that talk about, or crazy air quotes, talk about ancient aliens and stuff, and then you see these these artworks depicted around the world, different places, but they have similar things I mean, who's to say that, and with like Graham Hancock's work and Randall Carlson's work, and as they were, for years and years been called crazy people. And now we are learning that our timeline is completely off, and the history is so much older than what we know. Who's to say that, the Millennium Falcon and stuff like that didn't exist, 10,000 years ago. And there was a great, intergalactic war, world war, or universal war, or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, we've been implanted here, seated here, and we've had to refigure things out. And we all know that throughout history, the victors are the ones that write
Right.
the
Yeah,
books.
exactly.
So, I mean,
and it's interesting you mentioned about like the ancient aliens and all the technology. I watched this documentary a few months ago about like Peru, where they were down in Peru, and you see like those huge monolithic rocks and stuff. It's like they're supposed to have been there for thousands, however long. Like there's no way even like modern technology would make things that smooth and that textured and stuff. Like there's definitely got to be something more. And to your point about the Tartaria, that's another rabbit hole I've only scratched the surface on. That's a really, really interesting one. And even in Star Wars, they have kind of their own almost Tartaria. In the prequels, there's this planet that Obi-Wan goes to the Jedi library to look for this planet where he needs to go find something, and it's missing. It was basically removed from their archives, removed from their history. And that was done so because on this secret planet, they were growing this clone army and all this crazy stuff. Same thing, right? Like with Tartaria, it's like, why is it such a repressed thing? If it was all bullshit, then just let it all be out there, but it's one of those things. And I bet if you go to like Wikipedia, it probably says it's like a QAnon conspiracy or something stupid, which they flag anything that just to make it look like it's something that it's not. But that's interesting. Yeah, that was interesting how Lucas did that. Was he created a level of mystery like right off the bat, right? You didn't even see anything yet. He's already setting it in like a mythical time frame. So you like right from that start, and you can probably attest to it, seeing it as a kid, it's like, whoa, like, it's like going somewhere that you've never been before. And I think that was what made it really fun from, what I've been reading, about documentaries about the making of and stuff, is that, in the 70s, like Lucas was looking around at all the other art and films and stuff, and it was all kind of like dismal stuff, because you're coming right out of Vietnam. You got like your Apocalypse Now stuff. You've got just a lot of really heavy war type kind of stuff. And he's like, there really wasn't anything for kids, just like a fun story about good versus evil, and that's really what he wanted to do. But yeah, you're right. He baked so much mythology in there, and other creators have baked so much mythology in there. Same thing. I go on the Wikipedia. I get on so many wormholes about all these different military operations and stuff that I had no idea about. Like it gets it's crazy, but it's also fun, because it's also helped me, make a lot of new parallels and stuff as I've been looking that stuff up.
Yeah. The Tartaria stuff has really been a godsend for me, because it is a healthy distraction from what is going on, and making me pull out my hair and go crazy with, screaming at people on the streets and fresh air and sunshine, wearing masks and stuff, where I can,
oh my God,
I can, and I used to be a history teacher too. So I've always kind of had a fascination for history and been into that stuff, and not like necessarily what's in the textbook, but like, that obscure Ben Franklin book where it talks about how he was, just a poon hound and would love to chase chicks in France and stuff. And you're like, these are the kinds of stories like that I wish I could tell kids about. You know what I mean? So there's like, I realized it pretty early, like, oh, there's a lot of different things that went on that we don't necessarily learn about coming up. And then back to the Tartaria stuff and what you were talking about with Peru, it's just, the buildings, like, the post offices that are around the country, it's like we have a hard time building buildings like this now in 2021 with the technology we have. So
Yeah.
if you're telling me that we did this with, with pulleys and horse and buggies and stuff, and it's like, also, it's like, if these buildings are so spectacular, why the fuck are they still on dirt roads?
Right. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with him or if you're talking before, but a good friend of mine who does conspiracy podcasts too. His name is Jack Allen. He has a podcast called Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't talked to him, heard from him, you should definitely get him on, because he went through a whole presentation with me before about all these pictures and stuff he had about like the World's Fair back at like the turn of the century, and like all the buildings and like this. I had never seen any of this shit before. I was like beautiful, gaudy stuff, and then like for some reason they just bulldozed it all after it was over. It's like, wait a second, why would you not keep that? And then now you go to those kind of places and it's probably just all run down, and it's really really wild. So he goes into all that kind of history stuff. It's mind blowing, and it really, that's kind of that's I would say almost kind of more important than what's going on in this very second, because that's the basis on everything we know. Like we can pick apart everything that's happening right now, but if how we even got to this point was wrong, where do you even begin with that conversation?
Yeah. And then to think, some people theorize that, the war, even the Civil War and the World War I and World War II, a lot of these wars are not about what we're taught they're about. They're more about, like you said, destroying these pieces of architecture, like the bombing of Dresden. That whole thing is like, apparently that whole city was like, all those people were taken out of that city before they bombed it, and then you go and look at some of the architecture and some of the buildings that have been destroyed, in the name of upgrades or improvements and stuff like that. That was a big thing here in Denver. We live in Denver, and now, yeah, we just go out on walks and that we go downtown.
Shout out to East High School.
yeah. The three or four original high schools in Denver East, Denver North, are like, one of them has a clock tower, and it's just like
some Disney World stuff.
It's just wild, and some of the Ivy League colleges and stuff, where it's like, I'm not saying I believe it, but I'm not saying I don't believe it. It's almost the same thing with like the flat earth, or the realm or whatever. It's like, I'm not saying I believe it, but I know I've been lied to about a lot of shit.
Right.
So
right.
I'm open to it.
Yeah. And the big thing I've been thinking of, it's almost kind of like an easy way to kind of figure out if there's something to it or not, is do they try to censor it as much as possible? Okay, well, then there might be something to it. If they're pushing it out there as this is the greatest thing, well, it may not be. Like another good example, you mentioned the Civil War a few minutes ago. There's lots of back and forth about even Abraham Lincoln. Like, was he really a good, noble president that we're taught to be? I mean, I've been hearing all these stories about how he was throwing reporters and stuff in jail, for speaking out and stuff. And it kind of makes you question a lot of that stuff. So are some of the presidents that we've been told were like a bad seed, were they the ones that were really doing the right things? Were they the ones that were probably, speaking out against, the Federal Reserve Bank and stuff? And that's why they're so, maligned at this point. So you kind of like, it's like everything is upside down pretty much. Like what we're taught was good is probably bad. What we're taught was bad is probably good.
It's like George Costanza. Do the opposite.
Well, we're getting a little away from Star Wars stuff real quick, but our latest conspiracy that we're diving into, because it kind of hits home, is the Great American Lawn Conspiracy. And we had a gentleman on, Jim Gale. He does food form abundance, and they grow these gardens and stuff in people's front yards. And as we're walking around the city, we see people with planter boxes and stuff, and we're like, wow, how much do we waste water and grass, right? We don't get any produce, we don't get any fruit from grass, right? But if people had gardener boxes, trees, stuff like that, the whole world would be different. We wouldn't have to work for food. And then you get into why people wanted to control the food supply. Hey, let's put in lawns so they can't grow their own food. And I think that is what this past year has done. It's like everything's up for grabs at this point. Like everything is a reason for us to be held back at this point.
That's interesting. I've actually never heard about that. I'll have to look into that a little bit. But I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know.
You look into Jim Gale.
Yeah, Jim Gale. But I mean, just imagine like, because again, we're here in Denver, so like the homeless population has exploded over in the last year. But just imagine if like you could just walk down the street and boom, in one yard I grab an apple, another one I grab a peach, and then like, oh, I've got some romaine lettuce or whatever. And oh, this person's got a chicken coop. Let me grab an egg or two. Like, it's just it's crazy.
And the concept too about like, a lot of people in my neighborhood, like me and my wife and my kids, we're probably the youngest people in our neighborhood. So a lot of people that in like their 50s, 60s, 70s, all they do is like mow their yard and stuff all day, every day. But it's like really in the grand scheme of it, what does that really do? It doesn't provide you anything. It just clips the grass and you pitch it, So like, yeah, that's really interesting to think of how that could be resourced differently.
Well, it's the great American scheme. Think about it. You said all the old people are competing about whose grass is the greenest. And what does that do? Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah. I get myself caught up in it too. I'm like, is Ron mowing again? I got to get out there. I got to do it. Like you get that itch, but it's like an artificial thing that really truly does nothing for you. It makes your grass look nice. Great. Do we live in the grass? No.
Can we eat it? Nope.
No.
But then you don't even walk on it. You know what I mean? It's like, do you like lay in it? Do you enjoy it? It's like, get off my lawn. I'm like, well, what? It just makes you angry. So like, what's the point of it? And then, the thing that always grinds my gears is when I see, the landscapers or whatever, and then they're just blowing the clippings out into the road. I'm like, well, that doesn't do any better. Like, just, why not blow it back into your yard so it like repurposes itself or acts as like mulch or something, like blowing it into the road so that other cars drive through it and take it down. It's just, anyway, I got
a real interesting, lawn mowing rabbit hole real quick. I posted something really polarizing a few weeks ago that really triggered a lot of people. And I don't know if I'm thinking about it the wrong way, but I need to get your guys' opinion from what it's like where you guys are. Have you guys ever seen anybody mowing their yard with a like a face mask on over their mouth and nose?
Today I did, yeah.
Today?
Yeah, but I think it was more for the actual purpose as to why you would want to have your face covered so you're not breathing in the dirt and the dust and the pollen or whatever it is. At least that was my interpretation of seeing the landscaper that was on the sit down mower. He had one up, and I've seen some other people here and there like work landscaper types, not necessarily like homeowners, but I have seen early on. Probably like a year ago or longer than a year ago, like when this first popped off, there were definitely people like in their yards doing yard work with the mask on, and I haven't understood the outdoor thing since day one. Like,
I made a post about it because I saw a similar thing a few weeks ago. Just a guy with a push mower mowing his yard with the mask on, and and you've seen my Twitter. I always just post snarky, sarcastic stuff all the time. And I was like, hey, I just saw a guy mowing with the mask on. I want to go drive off a cliff. And because I had never seen it before. And who knows, maybe for some reason other places have different air quality. I don't really know. I mean, I live here in Ohio, so maybe things are different. But you would have thought that like I told everybody's grandma that they should die, because people were coming out of the woodwork like, oh my God, my son has allergies. If he could die if he doesn't wear the mask. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I'm not coming to your house and yelling at your son. I'm making a snarky comment on Twitter. Ease up a bit. People are very, very sensitive about that stuff. But like, so like, okay, now I got to add that to the list of things you can't talk about with people. You can't talk about politics, you can't talk about religion, and you can't talk about, mowing and masks. So it's the big three right there.
Seriously.
So Kyle, to get back into Star Wars, question I have for you, and forgive me not knowing prequel, whatever. I call them the first three, the middle three, and the last three. So sorry if I offend you with that. What is such a disconnect between the first three and those three that were made in the 2000s? Everyone, I'm sure you're sick of hearing about, oh, fucking Jar Jar Binks. Like that's the one everyone goes to. But I've stayed away from those movies because a lot of the Star Wars heads are like, you don't need to see those three. What's the big disconnect? Because those 6 movies are all George Lucas, correct?
Yeah, so they're all the story was by George Lucas for all those. Okay, so the difference I would say is the original films. George wrote the story for all of them. He directed the original one. He did not direct Empire Strikes Back. He did not direct Return of the Jedi. So it sounded like to me, in some of the behind the scenes stuff, it was more of a collaborative effort, right? Like he had the story, he had people working on the script with him, he had a director. They would all try to make it work. And if they had different thoughts or ideas, they'd kind of sit and huddle and say, well, let's do this, that, what have you. By the time you got to 1999 or 95, whenever they started pre-production on the prequel movies, by that point, Lucas was like probably already a billionaire, because of all the merchandising in the movies and all that stuff. So for those 3 prequel movies, he wrote and directed all 3 of them himself. So you kind of saw a little bit of, I think he probably had a lot of yes men around him. Like any idea he said, oh yeah, George, that's great, because people just wanted to be involved in the process. Whereas when he was starting up, and it's kind of like you think about anything, like, right, like any band you listen to or anything, like their first few albums are going to be better than their 6th, 7th, 8th album, right? Just because they have the more passion about it, they're more fresh, they're more motivated. So I think he had a lot of yes men around him, and I think he kind of almost in his own right became like the emperor of that Star Wars universe, right? Because you do see throughout that prequel trilogy how this emperor rises to power and just takes control of all this stuff himself. And kind of, that emperor character kind of cuts himself off from the rest of the universe. So George was almost kind of like that same kind of person. A kind of interesting like musical parallel I would say is like, if you look at like an album like Pink Floyd's The Wall, Roger Waters wrote that about like himself, getting his ego going up and up and up and detaching himself as far away from others as he could. So you almost think George was kind of in that same way. He was the ruler of his universe. He wasn't going to take any shit in the direction that it could have went. And I think the story, and I think some of that stuff kind of suffered because of it. Like in my opinion, it's a great story, those prequel movies. I don't think it was necessarily executed as well as it could have been. Like I think like when I lay out the story of my podcast and stuff, like it sounds like a really it sounds really good, but then just how it was executed wasn't great. The acting wasn't great. And the other problem too is that you look at those original films, the behind the scenes stuff is super compelling, right? Because they basically created special effects that we still use today. Like all those actual sets, all those miniature models, all that kind of stuff. Like that team that started that, called Industrial Light and Magic, they truly were like film magicians, because you don't realize when you're watching that Death Star scene that it's a bunch of guys in England in like a back alley playing with little cars in between like dumpsters, right? Because they make it look like something real. And when you get to the prequels, they got rid of a lot of the physical sets and like the physical special effects and things like that, because the technology had grown so much. Lucas wanted to, for lack of a better term, kind of flex his muscle on the technical side, on like the computer end. Like, hey, look, we can have like 1 million battle droids that we can just kind of superimpose computer wise in the background here, and it's going to look really cool. Well, yes and no. There's something to having things that are more real. I mean, I don't know if everybody realizes, but like there was a person in the original movies. There was a person in the R2D2. Like it was a little person in there, and he would like wobble back and forth and like give that character like a personality. But like if in the later ones, it's just kind of like a remote control thing. So you see how it lost a little bit of the personality to it, I think. In the script writing, like I said, he wrote all those movies himself. He didn't have as much of a collaborative effort on the script writing, which I think would have lended to a better overall story. I guess the downside too is when you talk about like the Jar Jar Binks and even the guy Hayden Christensen who played Anakin Skywalker. They get a lot of grief for their acting in those movies, but really they were just reading off the script that Lucas gave them. I would give Lucas more grief than them. They were just playing a part that he told them to play. So I give more grief to Lucas for somewhat setting them up to be, not setting them up to fail, but setting them up to not look as great as they should have been.
Nice. I got a quick light and magic story for you. Then I think I might have the ultimate stoner question for you to follow up with that. So, in 2011, I signed up I'm a runner. I run ultra marathons and marathons. So as a kid, there was this movie about this race that I would watch with my dad. And when I moved to California, it like became a reality that I could actually run this race. So I signed up for this race. It's in the Marin Headlands, and I was working in the CrossFit industry at the time too. So I was traveling around to a bunch of different gyms and stuff like this. And another runner that I was friends with, I was telling her that I had signed up for the race, and she was like, "Oh my God, do you know that they filmed part of some of the Ewok stuff they filmed in the Marin Headlands, right where that race is run?" And I was like, "Get the hell out of here!" Like I said, I was into Star Wars for the original first 3 or 4 through 6, and I was just blown away. Like, this is going to be the most epic day of my life. And so we went up a day earlier, and we were hanging out at San Francisco CrossFit, and doing some stuff at the gym or whatever. And we were like, let's go get some coffee. And so I put in my phone. We're coffee, Starbucks, or brought up a Starbucks. I go, there's a Starbucks like a mile and a half from here. I'm like, cool, let's go walk over to Starbucks and get some coffee, and we'll be back. So as we get into the area where the Starbucks is, we come around the corner, and here's this fountain with this giant fucking statue of Yoda. I'm like, this is what is going, and then like, oh yeah, you're at Lucas Light Magic. So there was a Starbucks at Lucas Light Magic. Leaving the gym, that's the GPS brought us to here. So I have this picture of Yoda, this Yoda statue, and then the next day I got to run the race where part of Return of the Jedi was filmed.
Awesome.
And like some of those like weird like bird noises or whatever that you hear in the background that you think is like special effects or whatever. Those are real animals that are like in the woods that you hear. So it was just
nice,
like the most epic thing ever. Just growing up as a kid to enjoy this, and then to actually be able to see it, just kind of made the trip for me.
Was that near like the redwood forest and stuff where you were? Because I know they filmed a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, there's some of the stuff was in the redwoods. This is in the Marin Headlands, also where some of the newer Planet of the Apes movies were filmed in there. It's called the Marin Headlands, and the race is called the Quad Dipsy. So it's called the Dipsy Trail. It's a 7.5 mile trail, super like vertical up and down. There's not really any flat part in it over this course, and it goes from Mill Valley to Stinson Beach, and then you go back and forth, and you do that 4 times. So it's like 28.5 miles, and there's like 19,000 feet of vertical elevation gain and loss in that distance. So it's just an epic memory. That is one of those things that'll always stick with me, and that's like one of my Star Wars stories, is that I always get to tell people, give me a little bit more clout in the community.
That's pretty awesome. That is really cool. There's some cool I was just reading some behind the scenes stuff the other day about some of the filming they did out there. It was kind of funny. So they said when they were filming Return of the Jedi in the redwood forest out there, they wouldn't let the actor who played Chewbacca, they wouldn't let him go off on his own, because like people would think he was Bigfoot. I'm like, and I had never put that together before. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. I would, if I was out there, like, holy shit, there's Bigfoot. And like, sure enough, can't finish filming Star Wars because Chewbacca got killed. I mean, that would be a terrible story, but interesting stuff.
And then there are people within the Bigfoot community that think that, Bigfoot is some sort of an alien species, whether it exists here or it comes in and out of, I don't know if you've ever dabbled into the missing 411 stuff at all, in terms of the missing people that are, the thousands of people that have gone missing and never been found in national parks and stuff, but they think, maybe maybe he is coming in and out of portholes. Who the heck knows? I just think it's sexy to think about all these stuff and fantasize about it, get a little, get a little too high and go outside, stare at the stars. But
you mentioned, you'd had Midnight Mike on the show before.
Yeah.
And I was talking with him the other day that there's this Star Wars comic from like maybe 20 years ago. They did this whole kind of series about just kind of like what if stuff, like stuff that didn't actually happen in the Star Wars universe, but like what if we just kind of played around with some of these concepts. And so to your point about, the Bigfoot Sasquatch being like an alien, in this comic, they had Han Solo and Chewbacca crash land on Earth, and out there somewhere. And like, I guess Han Solo was like killed by like Native Americans or something. And then Chewbacca was so sad and distraught that he just went into the woods and just stayed there for the rest of his existence. And then that the point of that was like, oh, then he is basically Bigfoot. I'm like, I told Mike, he's got the comic somewhere. I'm like, you got to find that and send me some pictures. That sounds ridiculous. And I need it.
He's wandering around like David Carradine in Kung Fu, just walking through the forest.
Yeah, Disney needs to make that movie. They just need to get that done. Let's do it.
Well, and that's the cool thing about, as much as we talk about Disney being the evil empire and the axis of evil, and you want to talk about Nazi connections, but that's a whole other podcast for another time. One of the beautiful things that they have the ability to do is now like how they can expand the series and like just go down all these Wikipedia avenues and rabbit holes and stuff like that, where, as a Star Wars fan, even though it like pains you to have that Disney Plus account, like it's just, I mean, we were enthralled with The Mandalorian. Like these other series that are coming up and popping up. It's like, I can't wait. You know what I mean? Those made it to spend that, $13 or whatever.
Bro, we don't pay
month,
money.
but,
we steal someone's account. What are you
it's worth
talking
it for
about?
those series. So
yeah, the Mandalorian.
Well,
I
someone's
would say,
paying for it. It still pains me to log in. You just got to go with me sometimes, dog.
Yeah. The Mandalorian. A lot of people say like, right next to the original trilogy, like that's right up there because Jon Favreau, who's been like the creator of this, like he gets it, right? Like he was at the cinema, right? Like you were as a kid seeing this stuff. So he's had those memories ingrained in him, and he wants to recreate that experience. We talked a little bit about the prequels, how they went away from like the physical sets and like too much of the computer generated special effects and stuff, and they reverse course. That's why you look at that show and it's so great because there's some of that stuff, but they tried to do as much stuff physically as they possibly could to give it that lived in, like that's the thing that's great about Star Wars. It's like a lived in, like you look at the original movies, it's a lived in universe. What I mean by that is if you compare that against other sci-fi movies like Star Trek or like 2001: A Space Odyssey, like everything is so pristine and clean and stuff. And Star Wars is saying, okay, it's a sci-fi universe, but it's been through hell, and it looks like it's been through hell, but it also makes it relatable to Earth because like you look at like Mos Eisley Cantina stuff, it's like a seedy bar and stuff. It just happens to be in space, So I think they used a lot of that aesthetic when they went to go create the Mandalorian, which for one gave it the vibe and the feel and the look. But also like the story is really good too. And they add a lot of those little Easter eggs in there for like the hardcore fans. Like, oh my God, did you see that one character? He was in that one scene that one time. But I think the story is really good. And you're right. It's an uncharted territory that they explored it in novels and stuff in the 90s, which Disney says, don't count anymore. But I think it's a really fresh area for them to kind of bridge that gap between that and the sequel trilogy, which is that's a whole nother story. God.
So here's my ultimate stoner question for you. It's either forecast is either for a rainy day or a snow day. You've got the refrigerator in the cupboard filled with snacks. You just went to the dispensary, maybe got an edible, got some chronic. In your opinion, if you were going to go do a marathon, would you do it as they've produced it, or would you lay it out in a different way, in a different timeline to best view it to get the ultimate stoner marathon viewer experience?
Okay. Yes. So the one way this is and I've never done it this way, so I really want to do it, and I'm gonna put the sequel trilogy out of it because that kind of ruins kind of the vibe of this way.
The sequel trilogy, is that the last three?
Yeah. So those are the three that just came out like a few years ago. So it's like 7. That's 7, 8, 9.
And you're not down with any of those?
They were good, but I think it kind of takes away from that original story, because like they bring back the Emperor, right? The whole point was that Darth Vader defeated the Emperor, turned back to the good side, his son saved, etc. But like when you bring him back, it kind of, in my opinion, it kind of takes away a little bit from that. And then there's new characters that are doing equally as great things as Luke and all those guys. And I don't know. Maybe in time it'll grow on me, because I'll be honest, like the prequel movies, I didn't love them when they came out, but I've kind of over the years I've grown to appreciate them a little more. But it's one of those things that's too fresh right now, and it's the same thing with the prequels. It was too far off from the ones you had seen before to have a good perspective on it. So maybe down the road I'll have a different perspective on it. But so here's the order. If you just talk about the original 6, so you have the original 3 movies and then the prequel trilogy. This way, I don't know what the official way of it is called, but it's basically called like the flashback marathon, which what you do is you watch the original Star Wars where they destroyed Death Star, you watch Empire Strikes Back, and at the end of Empire Strikes Back you have that cliffhanger. And this is actually really good for people that have never seen Star Wars, which I think there's like 3 of them left in the world at this point. But if you can find a person like this, like you have to do it this way. This is incredible. So you watch the original Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. It leaves you at that cliffhanger where Darth Vader says, "I'm your father." And Luke is grappling with that. Like, well, what the hell? Like, what do I do with this? Oh, it's crazy. So at that point, you don't watch Return of the Jedi. You go back and watch the 3 prequel movies, because then you're left with that cliffhanger of who is Darth Vader. And you go back and you find out who Darth Vader truly is. And then you come back to his redemption story in Return of the Jedi. So I've never watched it this way, but I've been hearing about it for years, and it's like a super compelling way to watch it, I think. And I think it makes sense story-wise. So I would like to go do it that way. I mean, probably visually it would be really all over the place, but that's kind of the way I would do it.
And for those original 3, would you watch the original 3, or would you watch the updated versions of those when they went back in and like redid the color and added some different scenes or whatever?
If you have access, like I have the original VHSs back here. Like if you have access to the original non-special edition ones, yeah, definitely watch those. And even they've redone it even more on Disney Plus now. They've added a few little things in there too. I'm like, come on,
really?
Stop it. I think it was George Lucas's idea, but like just please stop. Yeah, if you have access to any original ones, I would watch those, just because I don't think any of the things they added in there really added anything to the story. In fact, the whole, Han not shooting Greedo first thing, I think takes away from his character of just being an all-around badass. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to wait for you to try to shoot me. I'm going to shoot you first before you have a chance. Like, that's what his character is all about. But yeah, if anybody out there hasn't seen the original non-special edition ones, try to track those down if you can. Great stuff.
So you can't stream those, the super OG ones. You have to have like a VHS or a DVD.
Yeah, probably,
yeah, wow.
Probably. Yeah, like the Disney version is the special edition.
Scrubbing history, man.
I'm telling you, it's like 1984. My Star Wars, it's terrible.
Dang. And then would you throw in some of those other like offshoots along the way, or how would you, like, if you were to take on the whole thing, is there a way to work those in too?
Yeah. So what you could do that same thing that I just said there, but I will say, of the new Disney movies that came out, the movie Rogue One, which came out like 3 or 4 years ago, I think that was the most well done one they did. Which if you start out your marathon with that, it literally leads right into the original movie.
Okay.
Like it's basically how that ends is they stole the Death Star plans and now they're trying to escape. And in the original movie, obviously that's where you pick up with those characters. So you could really fit that in there. The other one, like the Han Solo one, I didn't really have a great love for that. That was okay. I don't know necessarily where you. I mean, if you had like, 20
It's
Coke
really
rocks.
good weed, dog.
Okay. Well, for this one, I'm proposing you're gonna have to add in some high uppers, because in between, in the prequel trilogy, in between episodes 2 and 3, there's an entire animated series called The Clone Wars, which has about 60 half-hour-long episodes, which really help color that whole prequel era of this war that was going on. And I think those actually do a better job of telling the story than the movies, in my opinion. But you could throw those in there too. So that's like that's probably like a 10-day bender if you can swing it.
We're going to Vegas for this one.
What'd you do in Vegas? We watched every Star Wars ever.
Never left the room.
You look like shit. What did you do? Star Wars marathon, and you would never believe it.
And if you're still up after all that, you watch the original, you go back to the prequels, to the Clone Wars, go back to Return of the Jedi. If you still are up for a few more hours, you can throw in the Ewok adventure from the 80s, because that takes place right after that too. So that will really be that'll be a great palate cleanser.
That was a TV one, right? Made for TV one.
Yeah. Like I think Wilford Brimley was in it or something like that.
I remember that one.
God!
They recorded it. Like I went to bed because I wasn't allowed to stay up that late or something. So we recorded.
Yes.
Oh man, bringing back memories.
Oh yeah.
Kyle, appreciate your time so much. Like Rich said, we're not huge Star Wars guys, but Disney, I grew up getting brainwashed by Disney, going there 2 times a year. So that's how I got my Star Wars fix. Yeah. So I could definitely dive in and talk this stuff with you. We have a couple rapid fire questions.
Kyle, are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah. If I drank one right now, I'd be up all night. But yeah, I've been drinking it all day.
How do you take it? How do you brew it?
So the Keurig pour the actual just ground coffee into it. So like I always drink like this Folgers like Colombian blend with, and my wife makes fun of me for this, so I'm probably gonna sound really dumb, but like whenever I make it, I always put 2 ice cubes in it and just a little bit of creamer, because I want to drink it right away.
That's how I roll, dog.
I love coffee so much. Like if it's too hot to like 2 ice cubes in, drink it real quick. A little bit of creamer too.
Right on. There's a place in, I believe it was a Cincinnati, Jim.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I believe it's Third Wave Water is based out of Cincinnati. Gentleman's name is Charles Nick, and he actually used to buy his coffee at home. Didn't taste like the coffee at the coffee shop. And so being a super genius, he got to talking with the roaster and the brewer, and they found out that there's this special like barista federation that has a specific water profile for pH. And what he did was he took that water from his favorite coffee shop that had that specific pH. He dehydrated it, and then he put it on the market and sell in a gallon of distilled water, and then brew your coffee with that. And then that's what's going to give it. It's, some people think it's the temperature that you brew it at, or the beans, or obviously different beans are roasted. It's going to give you a better flavor, but it's really more about the water more than anything. So that's our little pro tip. We had him on a couple months back, but
nice.
It's more about the water that's going to pull out the different notes and the complexities of the flavors of the coffee.
Okay. That's good to know. That's good to know.
And it's designed by a super genius, so that's always a good thing too.
Yeah.
Kyle, do you have a morning ritual or daily routine that you do?
Yeah, so I wake up super early. So a little more about me. Like I'm married. I have 2 kids under the age of 5. Okay, so when they're up, the day is going. Okay, so if they're going to wake up at 7, I'm going to wake up at 5, just because I need a little bit of that me time, because I know how mornings are crazy. It's going to get nuts. So I wake up at 5. I'll do like I have an elliptical here, so I'll do like just like a 10 to 15 minute cardio exercise, not necessarily for any physical effects. It gets my brain moving. It like, otherwise I just have like this brain fog all day if I don't get that in. So I do that for about 10, 15 minutes. I work on a little podcast stuff for about maybe half hour, 45 minutes or something, drink coffee, have a little bit of breakfast, and go take a shower. And hopefully by that time, then everybody's up and I've already done all the things that I want to do. And I'm not stressed out because I didn't get to do this, that, or the other thing. So always, wake up, do that little bit of cardio, get the brain kicked into gear.
Nice. What kind of music do you prefer? Do you listen to? I know you mentioned country music. Do you have anything that you're listening to specifically now? We talked about some of the podcasts. Do you have any other podcasts you might recommend other than the ones that we mentioned? And are you reading anything, audiobooks?
Sure. So I'll go like Yoda. I'll go reverse order with that. So I'm actually reading through. I've never read through them before. I'm reading through like the novelizations that came out with the original Star Wars movies, because there's a lot of extra color and commentary and stuff in there that you don't necessarily see on screen, which I think is really interesting. So I'm reading through that, and I've been making some kind of notes and highlighting like interesting quotes and stuff throughout there that aren't really in the movies but are kind of key to the story. So that's one thing. And then what were your other? Sorry, I had a brain slip there. What was the other?
Podcast, and then generally, what kind of any music, any new music? What do you got? And what's on your iPod right now? What's in the shuffle playlist?
Sure. So podcast wise, I would recommend my good buddy Jack Allen, who it's called Konspiracy or Just a Coincidence podcast. He goes through and he reads probably 2, 3, 4 books a week on various topics, like we talked about, like false history, all that kind of stuff. He reads through all this stuff and he makes notes and has a lot of great episodes he does on that. So I would recommend him. I used to listen to a lot more podcasts, but since I've been working, I used to like commute a half hour in the morning, half hour back. But since I've been working remotely now, I don't necessarily have that morning drive or evening drive. So I had to kind of scale way back a lot of the podcasts to listen to. But other ones, obviously, you guys already know about. There's the macroaggressions, obviously, Sam Tripoli, Midnight Mike, the OBDM podcast. I really recommend those. Music wise, I'm a really, really huge Tool fan. I'm big into Tool. Everything about Tool. The new album a little bit, but it's not as great as the other ones, but still, like I will put that on any day, anytime. All about that. Other than that, kind of the complete opposite, but I'm really big into like Genesis and Phil Collins, stuff like that. So I don't know how I kind of fell into that. Probably when I became a dad, I think I just started like listening to Phil Collins. I think that just came with the dad manual, but like I've been really digging that stuff. So kind of two like very disparate kind of things, but like I like them kind of in their own way.
Don't sleep on Easy Lover.
Oh man, that's a fucking jam right there. Oh,
is that Philip Bailey? Is that other gentleman?
Philip Bailey, yeah. Earth, Wind, and Fire, yeah. Killer.
Oh, he's in Earth, Wind, and Fire. Damn, I learned something new today. I learned a lot of new things, but I never knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you familiar with this?
Dark Disciple. I know that came out a few years ago.
Okay, I found we have here in the city, they have people put these little like they almost look like mini houses, but they're like called free public libraries, and people just put books in there. It's like leave one, take one kind of thing. And I just, in the heat of the Mandalorian this last season, I spotted this and I was like, I gotta grab this, but I haven't dug into it yet.
Let me see. Oh, okay. So it's about some dark women, okay. Dark Lords of the Sith type. Yeah,
like a feminist book.
I don't know, but the two characters, Asajj Ventress. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. If they even go into it's from 6 years ago, so I think it might have been slightly before the wokeness kicked in. Oh God. I'm telling you, like I try to like seek out like Star Wars fans and stuff on like Twitter and in places like that. And every single one I find has all of the stuff in their profile that I'm like, okay, they got all the different flags, and they got the pronouns, and they got the every social thing that's going on right now. I'm like, can you just say I like Star Wars and let's talk about Star Wars? Like, I just want to find people like that aren't going to have that kind of stuff. But then again, they're probably thinking the same thing about me. Like, why can't you just talk about Star Wars when you have all this crazy conspiracy bullshit?
Yep.
And last but not least,
Like, I think I've kind of
Wait. Go ahead,
I think I've like catfished some Star Wars fans into thinking that like I just talk about Star Wars. So like they start following me, and then like I'm like, oh great, yeah, that Mandalorian, that was awesome. But hey, did you know the vaccine's gonna kill everybody? Like they're like, whoa, hold on a second. I'm here for about the Star Wars. So they're probably all don't unfollow me, just have me on mute or something.
They're the ones that flag your shit.
Yeah, probably. I probably got a strike or something.
and last but not least, what is your favorite conspiracy theory?
My favorite conspiracy theory. I would say, and kind of going back to what we talked about at the very beginning about how I got my podcast started, the one that's really interesting that I don't really know if there's even a provable way to prove it or not, but have you guys heard the one like about the Titanic? I mean, there's a few of them. Yeah. About JP Morgan. Yep. So he at that time, JP Morgan was set to sail, who obviously grew into the Chase Bank and all that brand now. But he was set to sail on the Titanic, and at the last second he reversed course and stayed in Europe. And a few like other big, rich, wealthy guys that were on it allegedly had opposed what he wanted to do like with the Federal Reserve Bank in America. And, sure enough, they all died and he lived. In the next year, the Federal Reserve went into effect. So was that a way for him to eliminate the competition? I don't know if there's necessarily a provable way, but also it was interesting because he was actually responsible for a lot of the financing and construction of the Titanic itself too. So if there was anyone that would have known what the critical flaws would have been, it would have been him. So that's one I like to relate to Star Wars, as far as at the end of the prequel trilogy, the Emperor dispatches Darth Vader to basically take out all his political counterparts, just so he has no competition. So I kind of draw that parallel there. But yeah, it's not. I don't know that it's necessarily a provable thing. I'm sure it's flagged as some terrible kind of conspiracy out there, some racist thing or something. But it's really interesting in thinking about that.
Yeah, I love the history stuff. And again, like I said, the Tartaria and the mud flood stuff has really been a godsend the last 6 months, and being able to take some deep dives. And I don't know if are you familiar with John Levi? Check out John Levi on YouTube. He puts out a video every Saturday night or Sunday morning, and he does a lot of examining of mud flood, Tartaria type structures, architecture. He's a little monotone for Jimmy, but I kind of can soothe out to him. Sunday morning is the first thing I do. I make my coffee.
Listen at times 2 speed.
Yeah, I got him pulled up right here. I'm gonna check some of these out.
Yeah, they're really good.
Nice.
One of my favorite ones too is the one he did about the I think he called it like the Great American Hoax or the Great American Conspiracy. He does a deep dive about Mount Rushmore.
Oh wow!
And like
interesting.
You think about Mount Rushmore, about the timeline of when that was built, and yet the father and son that are doing, the father died, but the guy that his son also connected to the Crazy Horse Memorial, and how that still hasn't been completed.
I'll tell you what, I was out there on a family trip in like 1992, and that was there's probably still been nothing happened since then. They still had like the chalk like carve out of like where it was going to go.
Yep.
No, yeah, I'm going to check out some of these videos. I like, right off the bat, I can tell they're going to be good because they're like, 10, 15, 20-minute videos. Like some people have sent me links of like, hey, you got to check out this thing. It's like not going to watch like a 5.5 hour documentary about this.
I
Like,
got 2 kids under 5.
Right, exactly. Like I can barely stay up past 9 o'clock. Give me a break here. Give me the Cliff's Notes version. No, yeah, I'm going to check these out. Thanks for sending me that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, before we get you out of here, where can we direct all the good people who already want to come find you and check out all your content?
Sure. Thank you both for having me on. I had a great time.
Yeah, it's the blast.
We'll have to do this again. So my podcast is called Konspiracy in the Force. I actually have the shirt on. So it's Konspiracy in the Force. You can find that on any podcast platform. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Konspiracy_Kyle, and the conspiracies with a K. So maybe that's helped me avoid a little bit of censorship because you don't have the conspiracy word itself. So anyways, you can find me there. And if anybody's a member of the Rockfin platform, it's like a $9.99 thing where you can subscribe and get my content, Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson, like everybody's for that same price. So I've been posting a lot of, premium stuff in there, some different deep dives into, like I mentioned about, I've been reading through the book. I've been talking about a lot of the novel quotes and stuff, and kind of some visual versions of my podcast from the past and stuff. So you can check me out there too at Conspiracy in the Force.
Awesome. I don't know if I've seen you on there yet, but I will. That's the first thing I'm going to do when we get on there is go follow you too as well on
Awesome.
Rockfin. Kyle, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on this evening. We really appreciate your time. Thank your wife and your children for allowing you to spend a little bit over an hour with the Airey Bros. We were really grateful. And like you said, yeah, it's a great fun conversation. Next time, maybe we'll get into all those figures you got in the background. My biggest concern is that they're not in their packages, so they've already gone down in value.
they've already gone down in value, and the presentation is a terrible value too, because nothing is arranged correctly. Next time we chat, I'm gonna have some shelving and stuff back here to make it look a little bit better. I got a 25. You can't see it. I have a 2,500 piece like Cloud City Lego set back here.
That was my next question.
it's freaking amazing. It took forever to put together, but it's my favorite thing. So I need to find a way to display that a little bit better. But yeah, we'll get into all that.
Sick. Do you have the Lego Cantina?
I don't. I do get like that. I swear I'm like 5 years old. I still get like the Lego like catalog like comes in the mail, and I'm like pushing my kids out of the way. Get out of here. Daddy's got to read. Daddy's got to read this. Like, but yeah, I saw that came out. That looked pretty badass.
Yeah, we have a mega comic book store here in Denver. That's like, it's like, a warehouse. Like, it's the biggest comic. I walked in and I was like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. But they have the full Cantina Lego set. It's like $600-$700, but it's pretty.
But yeah, nice. Yeah, that'll be my next purchase.
Right on.
Thank you so much. Have a great night and keep.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care, Kyle.